Now the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Garrity.
And welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Jim Garrity of National Review is here. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. We hope you enjoyed your Monday without us. I know it's difficult to get through that first workday of the week without the Three Martini Lunch, but due to, once again, inclement weather conditions around the nation's capital, the podcast did not happen, but we're glad to be back today, and we've got good, bad, crazy martinis for you as usual. The good as it is sometimes, Jim, not necessarily good on the surface, but if you dig deep down, it's potentially good for later this year. This is from a new Rasmussen poll. 1 in 3 U.S. voters now says his or her health insurance coverage has changed as a result of Obamacare, and the same numbers say the new national health care law had a negative personal impact on them. Overall numbers on Obamacare pretty much where they have been, 40% like it, 56% do not. Just 14% of all voters now say they personally have been helped by the law, down from 16% in January. 33% say they've been hurt by the law, up from 29% earlier. So that's better than 2 to 1 who don't like it at a time when, obviously, this is what the Democrats have to defend themselves against. The numbers aren't getting any better for them.
Last week we saw Harry Reid saying that all those Obamacare horror stories are made up, which tells us a lot about the functioning brain cells of Harry Reid. But look, the Democrats' response when Republicans start saying how terrible Obamacare is to say, well, look at this person who's being benefited. Look at this person who can stay on their parents' plan until they're age 26 now. You put through a massive series of changes like this, you can find individual Americans who are benefiting. You may even be able to find a decent number of them. The problem is you can find lots more Americans who are finding this to be enormously aggravating and complicated, and, you know, everything from higher premiums to higher co-pays to losing the plan that they liked to choosing to pay the fine because they don't like any of the options on the exchanges. You know, the leukemia patient being spotlighted up in Michigan, you know. This gives us a decent amount of numbers, and it'd be interesting to see. I'm willing to bet a decent number of those who are saying that they're hurt are self-identifying as Republicans. A decent number of folks who are self-identifying as Democrats are probably the ones saying how much they like the new law and how much it's benefiting them. But here's the thing. Some of this stuff can be in the eye of the beholder, but some of it can't be. And you know, when you get that cancellation letter, you can't will yourself into believing, as they say in the Lego movie, everything is awesome. And, you know, you're actually doing better off. Maybe you'll like the options you'll get on the exchanges. Lots of folks aren't. Polling numbers like this indicate the extreme uphill battle the Democrats have trying to convince Americans that, well, you're really doing better off than you were before, even though it doesn't seem that way. And this poll number is a good indicator of that. Also, it goes back to how the Democrats sold this, in which they didn't say, well, some of you are going to pay higher premiums, and that's just the way it is. No. Barack Obama on the campaign trail in 2007, 2008 had to say the average family would lose $2,500. And, you know, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan for most of you. There were no asterisks. There were no caveats or admissions of trade-offs or stuff like that. That's, you know, their worldview is that their ideas are all good and no bad. And, you know, reality is hitting them like a Mack truck.
Yeah, certainly the case. And as you indicated earlier, deeper down in the numbers, 47% of Republican voters say they've been personally hurt by Obamacare. So your breakdown on where some of those numbers are coming from is exactly right. All right, on to the bad martini now, and it's going to be there for a while. It has been there for a while, and that's the situation in Ukraine. The bad news since we last talked, of course, the president's remarkably weak response on Friday to what was going on in Crimea and Putin's jockeying overall. Now it looks like the Crimea is pretty much in Russian control. There wasn't even much of a fight for it. John Kerry is over there now in Kiev, and it looks like the strongest statement from the Obama administration is going to be a $1 billion loan guarantee program to the Ukraine when there could have been other diplomatic, financial, asset freezing options and so forth. And, of course, Putin now saying that this was an unconstitutional coup in Ukraine, and so essentially he reserves the right to do pretty much whatever he wants militarily there, Jim. So while everyone's breathing a sigh of relief that some of these other troops have been pulled back from the border, I don't think this should be any time to relax.
As usual with Russia, considering how they assured us they were going to respect the territorial integrity of Ukraine, let's take all of their promises with sufficient number of grains of salt. Yes, you know, the loan guarantee is a nice step in the right direction. They obviously are going to need every penny they can get. A bit of a challenge, though, is that we have a lot of other options that have been mentioned in recent days, and it doesn't look like we'll be really using any of them. The most striking one this morning came from, I always mangle his name, Zbigniew Brzezinski, who basically said that the U.S. should start deploying its troops to NATO bases that are near Ukraine, airborne troops and things like that. I don't think he wants an actual military conflict with Russia, but I do think he thinks that we should let Russia know that we have troops in the neighborhood and that we are capable of projecting power if necessary. I wonder if Chuck Hagel got that memo, since we'll be cutting the military budget so much in the coming years. But we've got more options. We can seize the assets or freeze the assets of some of Putin's buddies who are the Russian oligarchs and the folks who are the economic power behind that. Really very little talk about that particular option. I see Kerry's in Kiev, which is something of an option, but if you want to do a little bit more, you can deploy, the Sixth Fleet to the Black Sea. You can send the newly commissioned George H.W. Bush aircraft carrier to the Eastern Mediterranean. We can throw out the Russian mission in Brussels, because apparently, according to the Wall Street Journal editorial board, it's where all of their spies operate. We have suspended the Russia-NATO Council. I don't know if we're ever going to reopen it, so maybe the whole point is we should shut it down entirely. And then finally, the one for an idea from Tom Rogan I liked best was, look, one of the tools that Russia uses in its power politics is its energy supply, and then, the fact that Europe is dependent upon it. Greg, has anything happened regarding the U.S. energy supply in the last, 5-6 years or so?
Yeah, it turns out we've got quite a bit of it.
So here we have a continent that's always been a traditional ally of us and of great geopolitical importance that needs a lot of energy, and we have a lot of energy too. Now you'd look at that and say, hey, you know what? We can help out our allies, we can undermine Russia, and we can make a lot of money in the process. That's a win-win-win situation. We actually don't have the right type of facilities to start exporting natural gas the way we'd like to, but we can send it through China, through Canada and Mexico. We could do all kinds of great stuff for Europe. No movement on this front in the last couple of days. And yes, events are occurring very quickly and stuff. But, it just feels like we're moving at a glacial pace while the Russians are moving quite quickly. And you have this sinking feeling that, Ukraine, the Crimea, Russia, and Eastern Europe could occupy our bad Martini for the rest of the week and a good portion of the coming weeks, Greg.
Yeah, certainly seems that way. And back to Brzezinski for just a second. How bad do you have to feel in the Obama administration when folks from the Carter years are saying, boy, you guys look weak on the world stage?
Yes, exactly. Isn't this something there should be a PSA about this, Greg? We learned it from watching you.
Jim, very good points, but I have to point out the only reason you're saying this is because you just don't want to see Barack Obama succeed. You're actually cheering for Vladimir Putin. That is our crazy Martini, because that's exactly what some liberals are saying. In this clip, it'll be Sally Cohn, who has been at MSNBC. Then she was at Fox. Now she's at CNN, so she's hit for the cycle. She is talking to Danielle Pletka of the American Enterprise Institute as she led into this line of questioning.
Republicans are practically cheering for Vladimir Putin today. He's given them a new excuse, saying that if the president weren't such a weak leader, Putin wouldn't be threatening the Ukraine. First of all, did the same Republicans call George W. Bush weak when Putin invaded Georgia in 2008? No. There's an old Russian proverb, to spite my mom, I'll freeze my ears off. Danielle, aren't Republicans systematically undermining the president, trying to spite the president, but in effect hurting America's standing in the world?
So, Jim, Danielle Pletka then said, well, actually, McCain and Graham were pretty upset with the way Bush handled the situation in Georgia in 2008. And a lot of folks reacting to that would say, well, where exactly were the liberals when it came to Bush's policies in Iraq, especially Iraq, but also Afghanistan over the last 8 years?
Yeah, Sally Cohn may be one of the best practitioners of this obnoxious double standard form of debating. And I guess, look, it's crossfire. I guess you got to just take the lefty position that all problems stem from Republicans and just ramble out from there. A couple thoughts here. The first is that, if you want to say that Bush didn't respond sufficiently to the Russian invasion of Georgia, yeah, I think it's a legitimate argument. I think you saw quite a decent number of Republicans making that argument. Certainly McCain did. It's worth noting that this was the tail end of the Bush administration. And had the Bush administration, say, deploying U.S. troops to Georgia or trying to assist, massive arms shipments to Georgia or something like that, I think it's safe to say you'd hear a great deal of screaming bloody murder from Democrats who were running Congress at the time, because this was the, warmonger George W. Bush getting involved in another war. This is the old, politics stops at the water's edge card, which gets invoked every now and then, usually more often when a Democrat is president. And what's worth noting is that if you believe that different decisions and different policies will bring out different outcomes, then this has to be a legitimate topic for debate. You can't say, well, the president is making the wrong decision, but I'm going to hold my tongue. I'm not going to say anything out of a sense of national unity. Now, are there times when you probably ought to, just suck it up and just say, good luck, Mr. President, we're hoping for you? Sure. But in this case, what are we supposed to be, way to go on that 90-minute phone call, Mr. President? Boy, ascending carry, that's going to take care of things. Nothing has been resolved. Crimea is already in Russian hands. Eastern Ukraine certainly acts like they're certainly eager to get reunited again. Western Ukraine looks like a mess. And now there's actually a little bit of discussion that you're seeing a bit of more agitation amongst ethnic Russians in Moldova. So here comes step number 2 and the next domino to fall. So what Sally Cohen's looking for here is for us to basically not criticize the president because it's our guy. Obviously, we didn't see any of this during the Bush years. There's no way to say, Mr. President, we really should be doing X instead of Y. If you don't do that, then X never comes up, right? You're entirely dependent upon the brain trust of Barack Obama and Joe Biden and Susan Rice and Chuck Hagel and John Forbes Kerry to get us out of this mess. And it's strangely enough, Americans may not be all that eager to entrust them with this. It's disingenuous and it's typical partisan BS or something like that. But it's also kind of an indication that because there's not an easy defense to say, well, Obama has really handled this very well, that they have to basically say, well, the criticism is somehow illegitimate because it's coming for partisan purposes or something like that. I mean, the other thing is also I'm fascinated by this argument that if the Republicans are saying Obama's not doing enough to stop Putin, that this somehow turns into a pro-Putin activity or something like that. It's a fascinating gymnastic, triple flip, double Lutz turnaround effort of logic there to say that by criticizing Obama, by not taking a hard enough stance on Putin, you're actually helping Putin.
I remember it was shortly into the Iraq War when a dissenting member of the Democratic Party, who actually voted for the war, said, dissent is the highest form of patriotism. New York Senator Hillary Clinton. That's
right. But that was rescinded, I believe, January 20th, 2009, Greg. Now course. Obedience is the single greatest form of patriotism, apparently. Or, sit down, shut up, and be quiet. Let Obama take care of this. He's brought us to this success so far.
And we'll leave it there for today. Jim, fascinating as always. Talk to you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. And be sure to join us again on Wednesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch. Have a great day, everyone.